From the time I was about 5 years old, I started to question my gender identity, but at the time, trans wasn't as big of an issue as it was today, and so I just kind of let it go for quite a while. Then when I was 13, I was surfing the web one day and I found this website for female to male people, and it sounded like these were people who were fully transitioning. And I saw that and I thought, that's who I am. I'm a male trapped in a woman's body. I think one of the things a lot of kids today are not taking into consideration is if you transition, you can never fully change sex. So I knew that if I attempted to transition, I would be a 5'2" man with a vagina. That did definitely deter me for a long time. But then the narrative that I was hearing from trans activists and even medical providers was that if I didn't transition, I would probably kill myself. And given that I was someone who had already suffered from mental health issues in the past, I didn't want to risk that. I thought medical transition was my best option. At the age of 28, I just felt like I didn't have another choice. I tried being a woman for so long and I wasn't happy. So I decided to go full steam ahead with my medical transition. I started off by getting a prescription for testosterone, and to do that, I called up Planned Parenthood because I'd heard they provided gender-affirming services. And I thought I would have to go through some kind of process to get the testosterone, whether it was psychological evaluation or a certain number of visits with psychiatrists, etc. But instead what happened is I talked on the phone for 30 minutes with a doctor I'd never met in person, and I got prescribed testosterone over the phone. I had asked for a low dose because I told the doctor at Planned Parenthood that I was a semi-professional singer and that my voice was important to me, and the doctor prescribed me what I thought was a low dose, but then later talking to other people, they had started at half the dose that I was on. I was prepared for my voice to get deeper, but nobody told me it would be painful to speak. Nobody told me it would feel like there was a barrier in my throat when I would go to vocalize, whether it was for singing or even just being around my friends at a social gathering. It was hard to project my voice over music, and no one warned me that that was a possibility. I was afraid to be angry or complain about what had happened at all because I didn't want to say anything that would be damaging to the trans community or prevent anyone else from transitioning. So I just kind of kept my mouth shut for a while, but then eventually the pain and just the gravity of what had happened, that I would never have my natural singing voice back ever again, just hit me. And that was one of the things that led me to sort of start questioning the gender ideology and whether affirmative care is really appropriate for most people. I had top surgery scheduled as well, a double mastectomy. To obtain permission for that, I also talked to a different doctor at Planned Parenthood who, again, without meeting me, had written me a recommendation letter for top surgery. But when the testosterone just had such devastating effects on my life, I realized it might not be a good idea for me to make any more permanent changes for now, so I ended up canceling my top surgery, and I also canceled my legal name change, which I had already turned in paperwork for that. And I was also having a bunch of health side effects as well. I was having body pains, especially a concerning pain in my right side. I was having heart palpitations, and I was feeling nauseous all the time, just starting to really not feel physically well. And so I just got to this breaking point where I was like, I'm not ready to go back to living as a woman, but I just know that I have to stop medically transitioning. This is not worth it to me at all anymore. So at that point, I just stopped taking testosterone cold turkey because I didn't want my voice to change anymore. If I wasn't worried about my voice as much, I probably would have tapered off of it, because usually, if you go off of a medication, tapering off is the way to go because it can be really shocking to your system. But I didn't do that. I went off cold turkey.
Hi TikTok, I'm back again today with a big announcement regarding my name. So my name associated with this account is no longer going to be Tony Martin because I am now going by Kat Anthony.
At first, I thought I bounced back within like a month or two, but it really took about 6 months for the way my body operated to start normalizing again. And for the first like month, I've never felt worse in my life. I sank into a deep depression because as an adult, if you have no sex hormones in your body, it makes you feel awful. It just drains all your energy. I was just basically bedridden. Like I couldn't even get up or do anything for myself. So that was like a really, really dark period, having lost my voice and then just having like hours and hours in my bed, like not doing anything. It was probably the worst depression I've ever been in.
Since stopping testosterone, my voice isn't as high and girly as it used to be, but I can still kind of sound like two different people if I try.
Now, like a year and a half later, I look in the mirror and at least from a superficial level, my body and face look the same as they did before transitioning. But also during this period where I was kind of detoxing from the testosterone, I started to look into the studies about gender transitions, and I realized I'd been in an echo chamber and I'd been told some really harmful things by trans activists that totally distorted my view of the world and my gender or my biological sex. I just stopped believing in gender identity. Once I let go of that, it was actually extremely freeing, and I was able to accept myself as a female, as a woman, without attaching any kind of toxic, negative gender stereotype to that. Because the truth with what's called transition, I actually call it body modification and mutilation, because it's impossible for humans to change sex. So by affirming gender dysphoria and telling someone they actually can be the opposite sex, it's only going to encourage and enable that person to mutilate their body and sterilize themselves. My parents didn't affirm me, and at the time it did make me very angry, but looking back, I'm very thankful for that, because I think that if I would have been able to transition as a child, I think I would be looking back and I would be thinking, how could you enable this? How could you have gone along with this when I was too young to consent? And I do think that in the future, we're going to see a lot of children who have detransitioned being angry with their parents and feeling betrayed by them. Although I do have empathy for the parents as well, because I realize that this is what our politicians, some pediatricians, certainly trans activists are instructing them to do. They are telling them to affirm. So parents may believe they're doing what's correct, but I think in the future, looking back, it's going to be a huge scandal, and we're going to have a lot of regretful young people who can't have children, or their voices are irreparably changed, or they've cut off body parts that they'll never get back.